I'm Jeffrey Rickman. I'm the pastor at Nowata United Methodist Church, and I do interviews from time to time with different people in the area with hopes that we can just build up the community of Nowata and help the people there and serve as a good representative witness for Jesus Christ and the Wesleyan tradition. And today I'm really happy to sit down with Reverend Dr. Jim Dunn, who is the president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University. You guys call it OKWU, don't you?
OKWU, that's right, OKWU.
And we're sitting down in the La Quinta Mansion over here, which is quite nice. If you haven't ever been over here, you need to come walk through these historic halls originally built by Foster. What was his
H.V. Foster.
H.V. Foster, an oil tycoon who just built this amazing house ostensibly to give Great Depression workers something to do. But it is a nice place to be. Thank you for having us in your office.
That's great to have you guys here, and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, you are universally liked by everyone who meets you. You're filling the shoes of, it was Everett Piper, right?
Dr. Everett Piper.
Who was also very respected in the area, and you're a different person than him, but same theological heritage, same student body and facilities to work with, and well, perhaps, I didn't ask you this before we turned on, but how many, do you have any idea how many people from Nowata end up attending school here on an annual basis?
Yeah, there have been a few. I don't know what our current count is right now, but from time to time, schools like Nowata, Pawhuska, we have a few students from Oklahoma Union in that area right now, a couple from Veneta. So there are a few that come from the vicinity of the university here, which is, something that should be natural, should be something that's normal.
Well, it should be, yeah, and that's why it made sense to me to sit down with you, because this is the closest liberal arts college to Nowata. This is just in Bartlesville. I was able to drive over here, what was it, 25 minutes? Really not a far drive at all.
Yeah.
It's real easy to commute. If you live in Nowata, it's a beautiful campus to live on. I would like to think that my kids will think about coming here in the future, especially because it's not just a liberal arts college, but it's explicitly religious.
Yeah.
I went to a Methodist founded liberal arts college, but it was not explicitly religious. I went to chapel there maybe 4 times in 4 years. Yeah. It was a pretty debaucherous place. I felt very far away from God in that setting. The impression I get here is that you all take your Christian heritage and identity very seriously.
We do. Not every student who comes here is a Christian, and so we see it as a mission field as well, to evangelize and to introduce students to the optimistic grace that even Wesley would promote back in the day, and that no one's outside of the grip of God, and that we have the opportunity to introduce students to Christ. And so while our students may be on that journey, our leaders, we actually screen that door really well. And the interview process actually stops with me, and I want to know who they are. I want to know about their faith in Jesus. I want to know what they think about Scripture and who's the authority in their lives. And I want to know if they care about students or if they just care about themselves. So every faculty member, every head coach, and every director comes through me, and it's a thumbs up or thumbs down. It makes it sound like I'm the meanest person ever, but I actually do it because I'm a dad. And now I'm a grandpa, and I care who influences my kids. And I'm not in every classroom, not on every road trip, and I want to know who is teaching and what they're teaching and what is their basis of authority. And so if it's themselves, that interview doesn't go very well, and they usually are not hired. And if it really is a genuine faith and respect for the Lordship of Christ in their life, and a high view of Scripture, and a great care for students of what we're here for and helping them to get on the straight and narrow, then that usually gets a thumbs up. They've already been checked out, right? Their credentials, their records, whatever, have been all checked out, and then they come to me. And if they decide to be somebody that we're not after we hire them, we don't keep them. And I literally tell the students, even when they come in to visit the school, these details of how we guard that door for who's influencing these students while they're here. And I tell them I'm their dad, not to creep them out or anything, but
Sure.
I'm their dad until they need gas money, and then I'm no longer your dad. So.
Well, in the Methodist, the United Methodist tradition, when we're ordained, the words said over us are "Take thou authority."
Yeah.
And within the Christian heritage, in America, it's not very popular to have or wield authority.
Right.
But when you're talking about the household of God, we are given authority to wield in a godly way, to be honoring of the image of God in others, and to bring them closer as best we can.
That's right.
To the Lord, not coercively, but invitationally, which
Yeah.
I hear and see all that in you. And as you're talking through these other details, as a father and as a member of society, I often feel concern at institutions that have to guard against ideological takeover,
Absolutely.
especially with the academy. It just seems like this inexorable tendency of a lot of institutions to foster sympathies towards wokism and the culture wars. And what I hear you saying is that you are a guardian of not a safe place, but a rigorous and authentic and good and holy place in which people can not just grow in their academic capacities, but grow as God's image bearers.
Absolutely. That ambassadorship that you're talking about, that we're created to be in the image of Christ, is something that's so cardiac for teaching and learning today. And we'll have tough conversations. We'll have conversations about what's going on in society. We'll have conversations about ethnic diversity and the fact that a third of our student body is not white.
Sure, yeah.
And
just driving in, we saw a number of people. You would assume that an explicitly Christian institution, if you turn on the news and you work with stereotypes, must be a bunch of white privileged people.
Yeah.
But to drive in, it's just normal young people that look like they come from all walks of life.
Yeah, and they're all made in the image of God, right? And so we teach that and emphasize that. And there are some things I get asked once in a while, do you guys teach CRT at your school? And and one person really dug in on me recently in Kansas, where I was speaking at a church and had this stereotype that every Christian university was going, way off the deep end on things.
Yeah.
And I finally, I have my limits sometimes in conversations, which isn't always helpful. But anyway, I just said, you're right, we do. And they said, I knew it. I said, oh, wait, we teach Christ redemption theory.
Oh, I'm sure
the
he
time,
thought that was hilarious.
Right? Yeah, no, he stormed out the door. So I'll never be back to that church. But regardless, it's something that we have 18 different countries represented in our student body. We have 28 different states in our student body right now this fall. And there are people that come in with all kinds of different thoughts. But as far as what we're going to teach and lead the conversation, it's going to be Bible-centered. It's going to ultimately result in God's truth and also confront what the society or culture is saying is true or normalized, to be not anti-culture, but counter-culture.
Sure.
Is the posture that we take.
And so you've talked about the kind of standards that you hold for your staff, which is how you do that gatekeeping of making sure that there isn't ideological drift. If I heard that as a student that didn't know much, I would maybe be intimidated by that. What standards do you have for students at the front end? What kind of things are you hoping to see in candidate students?
Yeah, so obviously there has to be some indication that they can succeed in academic rigor. And so there are a lot of schools right now that will basically not screen anything. This is a big investment, and oftentimes something that requires something similar to buying a car or maybe buying a house. It depends on how hard a student wants to work, how many scholarships they can qualify for. So we want them to succeed, and college isn't for everyone.
Right.
So that's one thing that we look at. We obviously have behavioral expectations for any student, regardless of what their walk with Christ is or not. And so we don't have co-ed dorms, we don't allow contraband, we don't allow the things of sin that the scriptures would describe as far as behavior goes, and they sign a covenant to say they won't participate or promote, which is another big key, because There's so many things in social media right now,
Sure.
and we don't police it necessarily, but
Right.
if we find it, we will tell a student to take that post down.
Yeah.
And it's just not who we are.
Sure.
If they want to continue on in, you know, their own behavior and want to ignore the rules, which by the way includes they have to go to chapel. They get a certain amount of skips, but we have chapel twice a week. So,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't have graduated from here if you only
No.
went 4 times.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, they can make it up in different ways, but we want the spiritual influence in their lives, regardless of what they think about it, because of who we are, not
Sure.
because of what they want,
Sure.
but because of who we are. And many kids find Christ here. And we tell them we have a lot of fun. We just don't think you need a lot of extra stuff to have fun in.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're trying to create a safe place and a stable place for
Yeah.
students to thrive and get their education, have a lot of fun doing it, enjoy their college years, make great friendships. I get asked once in a while, do people break the rules? The answer is yes.
Of course, yeah.
And not all of the disciplinary things. If they come to my desk, it's a bad case of whatever we have to deal with, right? But the reason I know that students break the rules is because I went to school here back in 1984. I was a freshman. So I know people, I wish to say that I wasn't one of them that broke a rule or two then. I'm pretty sure they still do because they're 18 and they're curious.
Sure. Yeah.
They keep doing it and they're warned. We try to be gracious, but if they continue to throw their nose at the rules, then they won't be a student here.
Right.
And we censor that, we control that, and it's something that we're trying to create, again, that safe, stable place for people to succeed.
Yeah, there is such a thing as a social fabric.
Yep.
And the behaviors of one affect the well-being of another. So to take
right.
that seriously and with sobriety is what you would hope as a parent that school administrators would do.
Yep.
Although it does mean, you know, I'm thinking back to I'm 38 now. It would have been 20 years ago that I was looking at going to college.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm that old.
Yeah.
And I would have listened to you talking just now and gone, it must be so lame there. I wanted to drink. I wanted to chase women. But now I really wish I'd gone to an institution here because I would have been able to focus on more important things that would have formed me much more readily into if not a godly man, then at least a functioning man who knew how to be an adult.
That's a great point. And just to tag on to that a little bit, once in a while I'll get a comment that says, well, since you're a Christian university and you know you're not as big as OU and OSU and TU and Arkansas and whatever, you must not be very good, right? Or the quality isn't there.
I don't follow that logic.
Yeah, well, sometimes they think bigger is better. And so actually, you know, we have different disciplines and programs that people can get into with obviously a school of ministry and mission, if somebody's called to that. We have a school of business that's ranked as the #1 business school in the state of Oklahoma. We didn't do the survey.
Wow.
Right?
I think that's a pretty, have you ever heard that before? I've never heard that before. That's a good secret to spread around.
Pretty amazing. We have a school of nursing that's ranked as the 2nd best in the state of Oklahoma. And so we rank really highly, and we don't do the surveys. You know how
Is it all undergrad degrees, or is there any master's?
So we have master's and doctoral degrees we offer. We do.
In what subjects?
We have 2 doctoral degrees. They're brand new in the last year, and one is a doctorate in nursing practice, and the other one is a doctorate of business administration.
Okay.
And so we have masters in those areas as well as master of education, and lots of different programs that somebody could engage with.
Can you do master of divinity here?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay.
So we did have a master's in arts in ministry, and have reset that and are looking at bringing something back in the ministry area.
What percentage of the student body is undergrad?
Probably about 2/3 would be undergrad.
That's what I would, Yeah. And then before the cameras turned on, I was getting clear on the size of the student body. 1,200 total?
1,200 total.
And then about 2/3 of that is on-site, and then about 1/3 is online?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a robust online program as well, which is very important to some people.
We do, yeah. And we have that opportunity for bachelor's degrees, associate's, bachelor's degrees. But we're really working in all of our master's degrees as well as doctoral degrees to be completely online.
Sure.
So they're accessible to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And we do have a few master's degrees that are on ground. It's kind of a unique rule that most people don't know about, and it's a 9/11 rule. So our international students, if they're working on a degree, have to take 50% of their courses on ground.
Okay.
That happened after 9/11 with the terrorists that participated that day in that tragedy. They were all online students. Nobody knew where they were at, couldn't track them. So there's a governmental law that an international student has to take 50% of their courses on ground.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a 9/11 rule.
Interesting.
It is.
Well, the reason I came is specifically for Nowata students, and we don't have a big youth program at my church. However, I am very concerned about the youth in Nowata. It's a town of 3,000. Used to be a big oil town. The oil left. The economy's not great there. The vast majority of students, as I understand them, are from households that would be lower to middle income, not necessarily high academic aspirations. One passion I have is that young people stay in their towns and make their towns better. But if all you ever know is your little town, then I think you're really limited insofar as how much you can benefit your town. So it makes sense to me to push a lot of kids to entertain a liberal arts degree in education here. But they're battling, that's a big cultural, even though it's only 20 miles away, there's a big cultural barrier between Nowata and what they would encounter here. So what kind of things do you think would be helpful for a student that's been brought up in a small town that doesn't necessarily have the self-esteem to consider something like this?
Yeah.
Surely there are some that would benefit from stepping in here. And what do you think would be helpful for them to hear if for some reason they're watching this interview? I am going to try and push, if you are watching this in Nowata and you know a youth that would benefit from this conversation, I want you to listen to his answer, and then I want you to consider promoting this, just spreading this around, because we want to benefit the youth together. So I'm going to stop talking. What do you think is good for them to hear?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family that valued education, and I've never worked for a school before now. So that's something that's
right.
important.
You were a pastor.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was a pastor, a denominational leader in the Wesleyan Church, and felt compelled to consider this. Know I'm called to be here. It's kind of weird for me because I was a student here. I pulled pranks in this office on the president when I was a student, and so I deserve every prank I ever get. But I value education so much because of the development of the person. And in a liberal arts setting, it really takes a look at the whole person. It's a very Wesleyan model of looking at your mind and also your heart. And then we throw in things like servanthood, your hands, and habits, meaning spiritual fruit. It really is something that, if someone hasn't had that in their family, I'm really grateful for generations ago where somebody in my heritage went to school. My grandfather had a master's degree when it was unheard of, and studying during the Depression, it was just unheard of to be able to do that and to invest in that. And my parents valued education. I'm the youngest of 6. So why would it be valuable for somebody in Nowata, let alone anywhere? First of all, that first generation, first family member, we have students like that here right now. So you're going to find community immediately with a small town, never have been to college, first kind of adventure for the whole line of family. I mean, I'm talking about generation after generation.
You're saying that's a normal thing here.
It is something that happens here quite a bit. And I was just talking to a student this morning who's graduating in December, and she'll be the first college graduate in both sides of her family ever.
Wow.
Ever. And she was just smiling because she knows how much that's benefited her, how much it's stretched her, how much it's readied her for her career. And it's something that essentially you can be a part of something that's bigger than you, and maybe even bigger than some of the thoughts that your family's had or your community has had. And so it doesn't mean you have to leave your town necessarily. You can always go back and contribute and continue to, be a part of the solution to help things thrive again. But it is something where finding that community, finding commonality, finding friends that are in the same boat that you are. And then the thing that we offer as a Christian liberal arts university at our size, we're not the smallest by far, we're not the biggest by far, is that we value relationships. And it's really the shape of the cross. It might sound trite to somebody, but it genuinely drives everything we do. And that's our relationship with Christ, the vertical of the cross, and then our relationship with each other. And you'll find people that care about you here, that want you to succeed, that are going to push you, not off the cliff, but push you to be successful and to learn and stretch and believe in yourself. And so much of an education is perseverance and also just continuing to stretch and figuring out that you can actually do it and improve yourself and be ready to be successful in your calling and your career. And it's a game changer in life. You know, in the Gospels, I've often taught about the societal lift that Jesus brought with him. Lift.
Okay.
Yeah. So lifting society, lifting women, lifting children, lifting the value of people that were really outcast in the first century culture. And, you know, even getting over into the Greek methodology of education and opening that up so that it's not anti-Semitic, but if you were a Jewish male, you could be educated. Jesus blew that system out of the water and began to teach everyone and value everyone. And that kind of thing lifts a society. It puts you on a different level, not to be an elitist, but to be somebody who can contribute back into that society and make it better. And influence it for the good, hopefully for the good of the kingdom of Jesus. And an education should do that. You know, we should have not only hearts on fire for God, but minds on fire. Some of the people in patristics and Christianity have used that kind of metaphor, that our minds should be on fire for God, minds sold out for God, and continuing to increase that capacity that God's given us to learn, and then to be able to teach others with that. And so
hypothetically, there's a student, perhaps multiple students in Nowata that perhaps have been looking at a state institution, perhaps have not even been sure if they want to go to college, but for some reason, they watch a video of a local pastor talking with the president of a liberal arts college, and what I'm wanting them to imagine is potentially stepping outside of their comfort zone, coming into this sphere that is designed to build them up as a person, whether or not they're even a believer, just to trust that this system wants to bring out the best in them and build them up in a way, provide a space for a few years where they can intentionally be encouraged and pushed. And then, in particular, what I want to see, I think Nowata needs local businesses to intentionally create a logo. So it makes sense to entertain a business degree at the #1 business college in our state, and then go back to Nowata and help redeem their town, help turn it around so that after oil left, after Walmart left, they can create something that is good for generations to come. Is that something that sounds like a realistic dream for a person from Nowata?
Absolutely. So another survey that we didn't know we were in. So people are analyzing your stats and your data all the time and doing projects and research, whatever. About 3 years ago, there was a survey nationwide. What is the most successful school to help their students, their graduates, be able to keep a job 10 years later and add to their community? So they named one university per state. So Alabama was Auburn. Texas was UT Austin, I think. California was, I think, Cal Poly, Polytech. Oklahoma was Oklahoma Wesleyan University.
Is that so? It's
right. And I was new here, and I called some of our leaders that might have been here longer and said, Is this made up? Is this legit? Is it real? And they said, we don't know. And we did a little research on it, and it really was a legitimate survey.
Do y'all have like a real strong alumni network or something that helps each other thrive?
We do. We're not sure how they did the survey. We haven't always been great and stellar at communicating with our alumni. That's improving all the time and has been for a number of years. But it's something that, just taking a look at some of the data, some of the research, and knowing that somebody can be successful in getting a job, and because the value proposition of college right now, period, is there are a lot of people, a lot of popular people saying it's not worth it.
Right.
And yet we can prove data that you can be successful in getting a job. Our students are very successful of getting into grad school, even medical school. We had a student here that graduated last year that went into ophthalmology, eye, doctor stuff. And there was one school, best in the nation. They take 10 per year. He got in first try, first time, and is one of those 10. Amazing that would come out of here. But that kind of training takes place here. The MCAT was a piece of cake for him, and he smoothed right into this best eye doctor school in the country. Our nursing students have a 10-year track record right now on passing their state boards wherever they go. First attempt, first time, 100% in the last 10 years. And so, the success, and these are students sometimes that come in wondering if they're going to make it.
Right.
But that success and being able to contribute and be gainfully employed and go back to their communities or wherever God calls them to, it's off the chart. There's also another piece of data that we have that, when people talk about what's it worth and what will I have to invest and am I going to have to go into debt and is it affordable, and a private school, is more expensive than a state school. Sometimes it is, but we work really hard on scholarships and making it affordable. We don't want students to go into a bunch of debt. Sometimes they do, but it's also an investment. When you're a college graduate from Oklahoma Wesleyan compared to not going to school in our region, we've done some research and study on this, you'll make $10,000 more on average per year than somebody who doesn't go to college. And so not only is it a stable place and a Christ-honoring place, those values we hold very dearly, but also it's a place to be successful and to be gainfully employed. And somebody hasn't ripped all of your, moral sense and biblical worldview and what have you. Hopefully we've invested in that, not ripped it out of you when you went to college.
Yeah. Well, and we're living in a time where institutions, academic institutions are sitting on so much money. And, generations before placed such a priority on it. And yet the quality of an average degree seems to me, I listen to the type of people that do say, on average, a lot of college degrees are a waste of time. And I can say where I went, and I'm not going to say their name, but I'll tell you the motto they had was unto the whole person. It was tous andron teleon. And I thought it was so weird whenever I learned that, because they never talked about making well-rounded people out of us, and they sure never talked about any godliness or making us good citizens. It was more, we're academically rigorous and we're going to teach you how to be. And the only thing I was really rigorous at was drinking 2 or 3 nights a week. And that's really because it's clear to me that institution began with similar hopes and dreams to be a place like OKWU, where you're intentionally pursuing that and owning that, and it's not a joke. It's something that is your daily reality and culture here. And I just think it's a real tragedy that not more institutions are able to talk about these things with a straight face. So I'm pleased to learn about you.
One of the great gifts to me as the president of this school is something that Dr. Piper actually put in place well before I came here, years before. And we call them the 4 pillars of the university. And it's a focus on Christ and Scripture and truth and wisdom, all in a biblical-centered context. And that was something that was quizzed of me by the trustees. They valued that. I valued that. It was a good match. But that was already in place. And yet you have to guard that. You have to continue to uphold those things and make decisions on those core values, those pillars of who we are, and then help students understand that as well. And what's a lot of fun for us and for me personally is to see a student rise to the gospel. Instead of, wondering what the gospel is, but accepting that and claiming Jesus as Lord, repenting of sin, seeing their lives transformed. We did, at homecoming this year, we had a group of students that wanted to be baptized. We did that with all of our alum back. We had about 600 here for homecoming. It was a great celebration.
Wow, yeah.
We launched a capital campaign. We did everything that weekend. And we asked in the audience, is there anybody else that wants to be baptized? So 7 were baptized, and the young man gave his heart to Christ right there. And we've discipled him since to tell him, this is what happened at baptism, whether he knew it or not. He just came out of the audience and said, I want to be baptized, fully clothed, and went into the baptismal. And that was just a great celebration. We exist to advance the kingdom of Jesus. We happen to use education and athletics and arts to do that. Those are tools.
Yeah.
That's not why we exist. We exist to advance the kingdom of Jesus.
Well, and a lot of people, depending on how they're enculturated, would go, this is an academic institution, not a church. And these two things really don't mix. But if you know the history of education, you actually know that theology was for hundreds of years considered the queen of the sciences, that all knowledge points towards God because the truth is one.
That's right.
And so it is not Christians. If I had been an ungodly, worldly person who just listened to you, I would have interpreted your words as saying, oh, they're just using all this cloud, all these resources they have to try and indoctrinate people. And that's not the case. The case is that you are acknowledging Christ's lordship as creator, redeemer, sustainer, author of salvation. He's the one who created all this stuff. So with no shame whatsoever, you offer these things along with the author who created them, without separating the creator from the creation.
Right.
And so that's nothing manipulative. That's actually, probably the most loving and honest way to do education ever.
It's the created order, right? I mean, our brains, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's that holistic creative order. And so that belongs to God. And so once in a while, even in a capital campaign that we just launched, which is just an enormous goal for us to be able to improve and thrive as a university, somebody will ask me, so it's about money, right? It's like, no. I mean, it does involve money. You don't operate an institution at this size on just a few dollars, right? I mean, inflation hits us, the cost of goods hits us. I mean, it's crazy how much money it takes. But I'll remind people all the time, it's not primarily about money. That's part of it. It's about influence. And how many lives can we influence? We don't brainwash anybody. We lay it on the table and let them decide. And that's what the gospel's about.
Right. Yeah. Well, and if your long-term goal is to make authentic disciples of Jesus Christ, then you gain nothing by brainwashing someone, because that's not the stuff that lasts. The stuff that lasts is not coercive. It's stuff that people willingly submit themselves to. And the case for that is made not by coercion, but by loving invitation, which it sounds like the culture I grew up in, Christians were kind of ashamed to make an invitation or anxious to make an invitation. They carried anxiety about it, or kind of the feeling that that people weren't interested, but you really get this wonderful setting where this is a Christian institution. You're here. You've signed up to be here. Let's do what you've signed up to do here. And you might not know what that looks like, but let me lead you. And I'm sure there are some that get to the end of the process and they say no, but that's always been the nature of the Christian faith. There are some people that God is not calling, but you can't say we didn't tell them. We didn't offer the invitation.
That's right. That's actually, I don't know what it's going to be like when you actually are quizzed to get into heaven and to meet the Master. But I don't want anyone. So I have this really weird dream, and I don't think it's true. It's just something in my brain that I have dreamt it before.
Your final judgment?
Yeah. Well, also just waiting to get into heaven. So So there's one line that you're going to give an account for everything you said and taught for all the pastors, teachers out there, right? I'm going to be in that line. I don't want anybody in the other line, in the listener line, to point over to me and say, why didn't you tell me?
Right, yeah.
Why didn't you tell me about Jesus?
Yeah, that's my fear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do everything that I can in the days that God gives me to influence people for the kingdom of Jesus. And so that could be somebody that comes here from Nowata or Prohaska or from literally around the world to play a sport. Fine. The sport is the tool to open the door for us to be able to share the gospel.
Right, yeah. Well, you and I come from a similar, well, almost the exact same theological heritage, Wesleyan, Methodist, all centered out of the Methodist revival, of which John Wesley was the primary figure. And I would enjoy talking about a lot of that with you. Before I turn that direction and want to hear your thoughts on the United Methodists and our current conundrum, maybe we won't go that way. I've been reading this book by Pete Hegseth, who is a contributor on Fox News, but the book is called Battle for the American Mind. And he makes the case that across the West, for centuries, well, really millennia, the only model of education was what is termed the Western Christian paideia. Paideia meaning cultural method by which we foster personhood through an educational system, whatever exists. And he associates that with what today would be called the classical Christian educational model. He says that was supplanted starting in the 19th century with a different paideia, the progressive paideia, which began in Germany but was focused not on creating whole persons that could think critically, but creating good workers for the Industrial Revolution. And then what's taken over in recent years would be a neo-Marxist paideia, which is based on perpetual revolution, destruction of institutions and hierarchy, and intentional deactivation of our critical faculties. I'm finding myself really interested in what Hegseth doesn't write as an academic person. He writes as a person who is concerned about the Christian faith, although I'm not sure he's a model Christian personally. But I'm very intrigued in this notion that up until recently, education was uniformly seen as an intentional fostering of the whole person, not just the academic faculties. How much of that seems like reality to you? How much of that sounds like a good aspiration? How much of your hunger and desire for education is a rebuke of common educational models seen across the West today? And if you think this is completely boring, you don't even have to talk about it at all.
Oh,
but
great.
I've been reading this book and I feel like a fish out of water because I really don't know much about the history of education.
Yeah. So I may not have, the holistic kind of answer here, but I'll give you my perspective.
Please, yeah.
It's something that actually was revealed in a quick thought in the courtroom of Washington County, Oklahoma this summer. So I was chosen as a juror in the state of Oklahoma.
Fun, yeah.
Yeah. Who knew that a conservative, biblical, constitutional American would be chosen to be on a jury?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I spent 3 days of my life in this jury trial. It was a murder for hire trial. Nobody got murdered. Nobody got hired. It was just a debacle. And I saw 1 Corinthians played out in the courtroom, literally. And it was amazing. And so in the quizzing of the jurors, the question of the jury, the defense attorney zeroed in on me because you have to fill out a profile. And
Sure.
he said, so I see you work at a university. Are you a teacher? I said, no. He said, are you the janitor? I don't know how those two got put together, but anyway, I said, no. He said, well, what do you do there? I said, well, I'm the president. And he kind of did a cartoon, like, well, you're the president, just kind of shocked as if that means anything. And I said, yeah. And he said, you're at a Christian university, aren't you? I said, yeah. I mean, I don't know where he's going, right? This is in front of the whole courtroom. They're just quizzing all of the jurors that are in the pool. And he said, tell me something. What do you think is the biggest problem in society today? And I've thought about it, and I just decided to go for it. Maybe I'd be set free, and they dismissed me off the jury. I said, this is what I said. I said, the biggest problem in society today is the worship of self.
Okay, sure.
To which the judge forgot to turn off her microphone, and she said, ooh, that's good. Right? So it becomes kind of a point of view thing for me, and this may not be a satisfactory answer, but for me, it's this position of authority. And is it me or is it God? Mm-hmm. And if it's not one of those two, then who is it and what is it? Because what we have going on in so many circles is this pride, this hubris of, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Right.
I'm going to say whatever I want. I'm going to learn whatever I want. I'm going to have it my way, right? The old Burger King commercial, right?
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to have it your way. And God is counter to that. And he's not anti-you. He's not anti-people. He created us. He's for us. Mm-hmm. But is it an obedience to God and his truth and his scripture, or is it an obedience to me? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then how are we going to do that with each other? Because you're right and I'm right, and eventually the most powerful, the strongest is going to win that
right,
battle.
Exactly. It turns into power.
That's right. So it really becomes a point of view. Am I over everything, or am I under everything? But mostly under God.
Sure, under God. Yeah.
And that's the key point to me on what point of view are you looking at this from. If it's that you have to agree with everything, then I guess you're king and you're God, you're ruler, you're the judge of all truth and matter and whatever. Okay, people are doing that every day. This is what I think, right? Or is this something that actually comes in a created order from a biblical point of view that is universal to every person because we are all created in God's image?
Sure.
So it's kind of like,
it's that objective, subjective thing.
That's right.
Is there something outside of you that determines truth, reality, goodness, or are you the mediator and determiner of such things? In which case, by biblical definitions, you've made an idol out of yourself.
That's right.
And idolaters are not welcome in the kingdom.
Right.
So there is the place I started was a question about the educational method model that we present. But Hegseth does focus on this very directly, saying the classical Christian model is under submission to the Lord, who speaks to objective, not subjective, objective truth that invites the individual subjects to participate in that, learn about that, foster the imprint of that in their lives. But the current model of education very much is something that fosters a subjective, well, he says neo-Marxist, that results in a power politics, a pull between people groups and individuals to claim power and authority over one another, which is not going well.
No.
And it's never going to go well.
No, that's exactly right. And we actually tell students here, even if they're a visiting student, I seriously am here for the next generation. I'm not here because it's a money thing. I'm not here because I need a title. Students call me Jim. One of them called me Jimbo a couple of weeks ago. I told him he went too far.
Yeah, that's a little too far.
I'm not from Tennessee, so I'm not doing Jimbo. I get a parking space. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
None of that's worth it to me. If students can get right with Christ and then take the compassion they have for their fellow human beings, which is crazy compassionate right now. It's too much compassion, believe it or not, right? They don't have any standard because they've been taught tolerance on everything. You have to agree with everything or allow everything. Not helpful. No. But take the compassion they have, and more than that, get right with Christ first and foremost. My wife and I think they can fix this world.
Sure.
And, I know what the church says about young adults today. I know what the media says about them. They said the same thing about me when I was 18 as well. Different, little bit of a different twist, but same conversation. And we believe in them, and we want them to have this perspective that everything is in obedience or submission to God.
Yeah.
It's not into self-rule and whatever society says.
Right.
And this is where we get so messed up. For example, we teach all the time about biblical justice. We don't teach about social justice because you've got then to define who creates the justice. Is
Sure.
it society?
Who's justice?
That's right. If society sets it, that's what we're doing right now as a culture. How's that going?
Right.
Not very well.
Yeah.
If it's
well, that's what they did in the Third Reich, and we know the direction that
That's
goes.
exactly right. If it's biblical justice,
Yeah.
then we've got a frame to work from, a foundation, an umbrella, however you want to present it, that will guide that justice, that everyone's made in the image of God, everybody should be treated fairly, and it's something that we'll have standards inside of that, but we're not going to let society set what those standards are.
Right, yeah. Well, there's nothing we can do to put God in our debt nor to bend His will.
Right.
So our only salvation lies in aligning our will with His and our ways with His.
Yeah.
I said sure emphatically when you said you think the next generation can fix the world, and I instantly felt guilty because I am more of a pessimist than you. But I read Rod Dreher. I forget his book, but he talks about how the West is in a decline that it can't stop.
Yeah.
But the role that individual Christians can play and the church collectively can play is to form godly places where human nobility can be protected and maintained. And that's a project I see myself as a part of, is figuring out those leaders, those institutions that are going to be able to stand against the tides of a culture that's set on self-destruction. And I think in that sense, the church is the hope of the world. I think we are going to be one of the only institutions, we, the Christian church, whether it be in university form or the actual church form. I think we're the only thing that's going to be preserving the image of God, the nobility of man against the tides of what's coming. I hope I'm wrong, but if we don't even train up our young people,
That's right.
then our culture, our people, our children have no hope. So in that sense, which is the only sense that matters, you're doing deeply holy work here. And so thank you very much, Jim, for doing that.
It's an honor to do it, and it literally keeps me going every day. And being able to see the maturity as well as the transformation in lives. And even to a non-Christian student, when you tell them that, when you tell them that you believe they can fix this world, they sit up straighter. They literally get a little teary in their eyes because, so many people have written them off and they don't even know if they believe in themselves. And so if I can carry the belief for them until they get it, then that's what I'm going to do every day. And somebody believed in me, and I'm going to try to do the best to keep that going.
It's a good heritage.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk Methodism and Wesleyanism with you, and we do have the time, but I actually want to end on that note, and perhaps just privately or maybe on another filmed occasion we can talk more about that. I know I love the Wesleyan heritage, and you do too.
I do.
But I think today this was just about talking about the wholeness of the person in light of God's truth, and how you're a part of that, and how this institution is a part of it. And I'd like to thank you, and then I'd like to pray with you.
That'd be great. And It's our pleasure to be with you and to represent Christ here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, can I offer the blessing?
Absolutely.
Father, I would ask your blessing upon Jim as he continues to minister to the students here at Oklahoma Wesleyan University. I want to ask your blessing upon the student body here as they receive his ministry and the ministry of the staff here. I want to ask, Father, that you would help them to stand against the cultural tides that are so alienating and dehumanizing, that you would continue to minister to every person who steps on campus here, that they would get a vision of themselves for who you've called them to be, and that they would feel the power of truth calling out to them in their lives. I pray that that you would work in humble people across this nation and across this world to be drawn to institutions that have not been overcome by ideologies that stand against you, but that your truth would ring out in this campus and other Christian campuses, and that you would also help your church to remain firm throughout the world. Amen. So that no matter what's coming, Father, that different men and women of integrity would be leading and ministering to those who have ears to hear. So, Father, continue to bless Jim. Give him a powerful and fruitful ministry here.
Amen.
And if it be your will, Father, we pray that there would be some students from Nowata that are called to be here and that they are a blessing to the world, particularly their originating town, because of the blessings they receive here. Father, if it be your will, hear our prayers. You alone are Lord. We are but your servants. Amen. So give us humble hearts to follow and listen to where you're leading. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Jim, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, sir.